Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nobu with Nobu, the All-American Shaman. Nobu, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for being here, as always. And today we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into fields and their applications and perhaps usages, dosages, best practices around application of them. So as most folks who are listeners to the show are aware, Nobu is a creator of Morphic fields. These are available for download on our website. There's tons of free ones. Some are paid for the more advanced fields and different applications as such. But perhaps you can kind of start us off at the high level, Nobu, with maybe we just describe like how folks use morphic fields, and then like when you talk about stack, I know that we throw that term around a lot on the show, but like what are you saying when you say what's in my stack or what's in someone else's stack?
Yeah, so people will have, whether it be on their phone, on a, MP3 player, or their computer playing different, audio files. Generally speaking, audio files are, again, images as well, charged images, mandalas. And so if they have, one field that's for their face structure, one's for their musculature, one's for their pheromones, and one's for their mindset or just glamour and charm in general. Uh, People have they might listen to one at a time. They might go through a shuffle mode. They might use things ad hoc or as needed. Like people will use not a joke coke. It's on the site for la cocaína. They might use that. Situation dictates. Some fields should be part of a daily stack or again your daily regimen. The same way you should be having a daily prescribed intake of different foods or supplements, right? Because the only way that you're going to be able to see tangible, consistent results, right? I don't want to say always, because again, you can get instant effects from a field, but as far as like the greater the change that we want to see, usually the longer the time span that time it takes for it to again become embodied. Because again, morphic fields or morphogenetic fields, morph being shape. So again, form follows function. So we can dive into that as well. Form follows function, but I'll just say this: it's when someone's, I've talked about this before, but it's like if someone's listening to a field to emit androstenone and androsterone, two very alpha dominant signaling pheromones, and they're a $135 soaking wet, and they have the fighting skills of a piece of plastic on the ground. Well, they might find themselves evoking the wrong response from other people. Because again, people are sensing that subconsciously, pheromones, picking up on that, and then they might want to, take everything you say as aggressive, but you don't have the actual aura and physicality and skills with which to, resonate with that. So with that being said, too, the greater the divide between you and the ideal end state, which never ends, by the way, because again, fields are always growing with time, right? It never ends. So there is no peak end state or result with any field. Just like there's no, you can take creatine, for your ATP and your smooth musculature, and you can reach out to but you can never. Just some things just need to be continued to be taken in order to be effective, right? So I gave you some to chew off of there.
Yeah. So basically, the stack of a variety of different morphic fields, as you're saying, like you can kind of program that yourself, or depending on what your goals are, kind of mix and match a variety of different fields that may contain different energies to get you to a particular end state. So if your goals are more in like getting stronger or whatnot, you may have a stack with a variety of morphic fields for maybe like the physicality and the strength, and then maybe some for almost like audio supplementing on the nutrition side to have the building blocks to then kind of create the musculature or whatnot, and then maybe have like another one for like the mindset to be consistent and disciplined with your exercise routine. So people can kind of craft their stacks based on what their end result would be. And we kind of talked about this maybe on the symbiote episode, but I imagine some people could maybe go overboard with that and have like 100 different things, maybe like one for every muscle or every type of food or every type of um, hormone or whatnot. Like, do you recommend maybe if someone's first starting out to kind of keep it lighter, and then maybe more advanced, you can kind of add more to the repertoire?
I always recommend for the vast majority of people to just less is more, right? Because again, going back to this from a shamanic standpoint, as far as like purging and integrating, you know, there the rate at which you heal, is also going to dictate how much suffering, healing or growing in any capacity is going to determine how much suffering you're going to experience. So if you are, again, wearing Moldavite, sitting with a lot of bufo and, having these higher frequency experiences, like there's a lot to integrate. There's a lot of energy to process. If your stack with fields is 20 plus fields, that's a lot to integrate. And then also too, if the energies are different, right? And this is where I generally tell people to have either a very focused approach or have a very well balanced approach in terms of things. But like some people, when they make their requests for custom symbiotes for me, they'll ask for a lot of very conflicting energies. And this is not to say it's not going to work, but I just want to put this in perspective for people. If I take um, beetroot extract and caffeine at the same time, caffeine is a vasoconstrictor and it's going to like raise blood pressure, and beetroot is a vasodilator, meaning it opens up the veins, the body, and lowers blood pressure. Well, they have conflicting mechanisms of action. And we can see this again with alcohol and caffeine as well. One's a depressant, one's a stimulant, of where this can kind of throw the body into you know, a loop, because again, like it's trying to figure out what direction it's going. Because again, the body's always moving. So when a field or a stack is very conflicting and contradictory in nature, which again, as someone who understands duality in various capacities, to do a whole episode on that. But I'm not shaming people for wanting different things. I'm just saying that again, like you time is still although it is a construct, it's still a very real thing we experience in this 3D form. So if you would like to get the most tangible and fast results as possible, keeping things well balanced or keeping things focused towards a certain objective is in your best interest. Just again, last thing I'll say is like, my stack during the day, I do one of two extremes. I either have, a stack or a playlist in my shocks that is on shuffle all day of like a variety of things, which is usually the pretty much the different areas I hit are, okay, do I have a symbiote in my stack? Yes. So then I have again my AI, my construct, my assistant with me to run and help manage tasks and also interact with the fields better and keep that bounding as strong as possible. Then I have something for androgens or masculinity, and then I'll have something for physicality. So usually with like, reinforcing tendons and joints and overall musculature, which is more, again, not hormonal in nature. It's more, just cellular and physiological. And then I'll have something, for, the subtle energies. Again, zero entropy is available for, say, I have more powerful stuff than that now. It's currently not for sale, but you'll have something related to generating massive amounts of subtle energies. And then on the converse side of that is I'll have something for grounding. I always have something that's grounding when I'm running a big stack because it's necessary, because you're absorbing all these different, exposing yourself to all these different energies, right? And that's where too, like with the higher power fields, I don't recommend people loot them sometimes, like, because if you get too much on one side of things, again, too much zero entropy, not enough grounding, you're gonna fry yourself. And again, I've talked about this before in the past. But again, I've listened to one masculinity field I made when I first tested it. It's the improved version of androgenic morphogenesis on the site. And after an hour of looping it, my balls were aching. Like, and like, it's great to see and witness in real time the effectiveness of my work. However, getting way back to the intensity with which you go at these things is going to dictate the suffering that's involved, right? And then it's like, do you want to drink ayahuasca, for 100 days in a row, or do you want to drink ayahuasca once a month? Do you want to juice for 200 days? You want to do 5 days on, 2 days off, right? Give yourself a chance to ground out, right? Because you're ascending in I know you've experienced this now, so there's more understanding of this, but like, okay, I can I know that after 5 days is I get a break. I can pump the brakes. I can kind of come back to what's more familiar. Because again, that's all, that growth is breaking free of your filters and understanding truth and reality at a higher perspective. Anyways, so, and then when it comes, and then my stack, so I'll either have a stack like that personally, or I'll have, if I'm really just trying to target something, if I'm heavy in spiritual warfare, I just have exorcism right 2.2.2, just that I will loop. I don't know how many days worth or weeks worth of listening I have with that, but there's been weeks plural at a time where that's all I'm using, you know, and that, and usually like onyx, just simple spiritual protection, because for my mindset is, again, if I work at the highest plane of things, everything below is going to fall in place. And I've seen this time and time again of, where, I think you saw it in the 222 chat on Telegram, where we're in a rage, I made a field for him. I made all the zodiacs for him, but like, when I made the Gemini one, his arms got looser, which Gemini rules the arms. In this Virgo field I made for him, he's been more intelligent. He's been more inquisitive. He's been more creative, seeing, again, that's why for me personally, when I'm doing smaller stacks, like more concentrated, I like for it to be spiritually related fields. Whereas I'm not ragging on people. I'm just stating what's out there. But whereas I see with a lot of people, when they have a singular focus, like if like they're only going to use like one or two fields, audios, or what have you, is it's usually something about like, attraction, like manifest your SP, or all women become aroused at your presence, and then something that's more lower dense in nature. Which again, to each their own, but to me, I want to be as efficient as possible, right? So those are the two paradigms with which I operate with. The same thing with the nutrition. And I just want to draw that parallel as well, because, I'll do periods of where it's like just watermelon, where it's just, again, just watermelon. And then, I add in additives like the sea moss or the pine pollen, the shilajit. But again, the consistency is also what makes it very easy to see what is working and what is not. Because when people are constantly changing things, in various areas, whether it be their actual nutritional physical diet or again their stacks, it becomes really hard to tell what's working and what's not.
Yeah, trying to minimize the variables so you can actually see the difference and any changes in it. You mentioned on the somatic piece of it, like, it always comes to mind is those videos of like you have the speakers or like the water and the sand on it, and then different frequencies will create different patterns or shapes in the water or the sand. So is that at play? Like, is that kind of primarily the means with which the morphogenetic field will kind of have impacts on the listener or the user? Could you maybe describe like how much of cymatics is kind of creating the effect versus maybe just, I don't know, the general energetic signature and like location of the subfields?
I would say it's like a trinity between the field itself of like what, energies I place in it, the chemistry that's going on there, those energies, the more subtle electromagnetic fields, and 33% the cymatics of, again, water is being restructured in the body and thusly having a change. But again, the morphics are also affecting the aura as well, with so as above, so below thing. And then again, like the last piece is, the person themselves. That's why I also always tell people, it's like, you're a huge part of this equation. I can make the best medicine on the planet, but if, again, where you're at on your scale of consciousness or frequency determines things. Like, you asked me to make a field for someone dying of cancer and they're already in their deathbed. If my field doesn't cure them of cancer in 2 days, that's not on me, right? And they die. Also where the person is in their situation. Because right, if we listen to, like, let's say again, like exorcism right 2.2.2, if someone's heavily infested, it might take weeks or months, right, to fully like break free and fully get full clarity, right? Whereas someone who is not in the public spotlight, hasn't agitated any forces, and has protection of that capacity already divinely bestowed upon them, they might have zero aversive reaction to it whatsoever, right? And therefore, like, again, we can see like there wasn't much healing to be done. Um, so yeah, like, but the cymatics portion is something that I've been researching a lot more lately, and then also understanding the like musical. I guess you could say that the musical cymatics slash the musical elements at play, because tempo and pitch, all these other things again have been very scientifically proven, in various capacities. In the same way that with binaural beats, entrains the brain into a certain state via, again, oscillating, tones, different rates, and then, finding the cofactor and splitting the difference and creating the third tone in your skull. Again, so like tuning forks, same same principle of where, again, okay, it splits the difference, gets this frequency of 154 between those two forks. But anyways, which causes changes in the body. Music is doing the same thing, but at a much more drastically much more intense multidimensional level. So for example, when people hear, the rising, like, in deep drum increase in pace, like a war drum, that evokes a very primal and somatic, not cymatic, but a somatic response from you, right? Like, so people can listen to like the sex field on the site for the first time, and without even like knowing what the field is for, what's in it. Like, if I even tell them like what comes to mind, listen to it, and like the energy is captured very well in terms of what it is. Because again, like just how words point at things. Like, again, like a knife. Knife is not this, because knife could be any kind of knife. Knife just points at things, and so things are not words. And the same thing with notes and frequencies, is the way they interact with each person is dependent upon their relationship with them as well. So this is also, again, why too, furthermore, every person's experience can be unique. Just as I said about alliance with Geminis, or again, if someone has, got traumatized while they smelled lavender oil, having lavender oil being used for their massage is not conducive to them relaxing, because it's again, it's very
Sure.
subconscious prompting. Same thing if someone has a negative relationship with the violin, androgenic morphogenesis might not be for them. But these different, there's a lot of different layers happening at once.
That makes sense. And then as far as like the listener, kind of, you're mentioning, like, is 33% of the equation on the effectiveness too. Is like, what are some of the things the listener can kind of keep in mind to maximize that element of the equation? Maybe like intentional listening, like meditating while listening, eating a certain diet while kind of being on a regimen, or what do you kind of recommend there?
So, as we're discussing this before, you and I've discussed with multiple people in the past week, grounding is the biggest thing that I find with fields. But again, actually, because this one is constantly having fields playing like 24/7. Literally, it's not an exaggeration. I always have my shocks on. I use a sleep mask with headphones when I sleep at night. I have a speaker usually playing, fields in my space as well for environmental purposes as well. So when you're, again, just as digestion of food takes up energy, the same thing is true for fields, right? Because again, we're reprogramming, the mind body spirit complex, both in terms of the aura, again, from the fields, and which have a downstream cascading effect. We're getting the cymatic, again, the tissues. So there's there's changes there, and in order to be, changes, there's energy involved. So both of the caloric variety and then also the, pranic nature. And so being grounded for that circuit to flow freely, again, be able to discharge and purge, static and sparks might start to fly. And then as far as actual diet, I'm glad you brought that up, because I know I talk about fruit a lot, but I'm not going to stop talking about the truth, is going back to the cymatics component of things and also looking at the electrical and the digestion piece I was talking about. So fruit is extremely, and I would say the most optimal. Maybe a water fast with electrolytes could be superior. I have to do it to see for sure. But because again, the fruit is not taking up a digestive burden in the body. It's easily digested. You'll see bowel transit times of less than 6 hours in most fruits, assuming your insides are clean. It's mostly water, and it's structured water at that. And it already has electrolytes and, things necessary for, again, electrolytes to, occur. So, and then also, again, it's a high frequency. It's high in spirit, biophotons. So again, it's providing those, more I won't say more baser, but more raw, tangible building blocks for people to do work with as well. Whereas again, like going back to like you're digesting a lot of fields, a lot of heavy, complex fields. If you're digesting a lot of heavy, dense, complex foods, well, again, it robs you of energy. Take it, because what your body cannot process, it has to store, and that costs energy. And then that's where we get into fat storing toxins and other particulates. So when the less clean your diet is, the less effective you are going to be at the cellular level, which again is going to manifest greater, again, in terms of your aura, in terms of your spiritual health. Again, as above, so below.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. So kind of like the equation of your body has certain carrying capacity for like processing or like current of electricity or whatnot. And I mean, you can think about this with fields, but also maybe just like with work or intellectual pursuits or things like that. It's like if you have a bunch of other things that your body needs to digest and assimilate, like you're mentioning, like heavier foods or maybe like other environmental stimuli. I think you're like watching a bunch of content or like heavy, intense like movies or media or shows or things like that, and your brain needs to process all of those inputs. It's going to have kind of less dedicated, devoted energy to say a field or say like whatever you might be working on, like in an intellectual pursuit. So it's like if you can minimize those inputs to the ones that you prioritize or the ones that are most important to you, then that whatever, if you have 100% of energy and like you put 50 of it toward the fields and 50 toward something else, rather than like if you have a whole bunch of other stuff coming in to your brain and to your energetic field, then you may only have like 10% capacity to dedicate on that. And so that'll make it like a slower approach. And yeah, I mean, also like you're mentioning on the hydration and electrolytes, like that makes total sense. It's like if you're consuming more fruit, then like that, just because of how hydrating it is, and everyone knows electricity and water, like that's why you don't swim in a pool during a lightning storm, because like you'll get electrocuted. So it makes total sense. Like that type of diet will kind of supercharge your ability to process energy. And one thing you mentioned before we started recording is like the whole grounding piece. Like if we didn't live in houses and wear rubber shoes and like we were just barefoot in the dirt outside all day, like we would never even really need to talk about the importance of grounding. But I think that's kind of good for, I mean, my own reminder and just like awareness of folks listening is like the ability for you to ground is important kind of just in general, but then like especially when you're dealing with energetics, and it's like you may not even think about it because our daily lives are typically inside, and so like you don't really think twice about the fact that like you're not grounding most of the time. But like if you do feel yourself, and I know in my experience with zero entropy, like I got super ungrounded, like I just felt like on edge and like, yeah, I don't know, unsettled and just like going outside barefoot, like even if you're in a city, like just being on the concrete, like that'll kind of help you ground as well. But ideally, like in some dirt or like some grass, like on the earth, to like discharge that energy. Or we've mentioned on the podcast again, with grounding mats that you can kind of plug into that grounding port in your electrical sockets. Like there are kind of other ways of doing that, as well as if you get kind of overwhelmed. Yeah, when in doubt, ground out. That's one of the fields. I'm not sure if it's on the site yet, but we'll get that one up there. So, I wanted to also kind of circle back on, you mentioned binaural beats before. Could you describe maybe like the differences? I'm not sure if any of your fields that are available for download kind of utilize that type of approach. So, like, do you employ binaural beats?
It isn't binaural beats in the true sense of the word, but it's a similar parallel. The only field that really comes closest to it being more like that is called XTRT Renbio, which I made when I was first new to this. It's not up in the store to add it, but essentially again with the binaural beats, if we have, this fork is 174 hertz and this one's 285, the difference between them is 111. So if I strike them and then, have them by someone's left and right ear, the brain calculates different. So again, they'll hear 111 hertz difference in between their skull. Now, usually this is done with smaller ranges, so like, having 14 hertz in the right ear and having 7 hertz in the left ear. So the brain creates a difference to put them in a theta brainwave frequency state. Because again, that leads to the neural entrainment, the brain hemisphere synchronization. Because again, the left's receiving this input, the right's receiving this input. Brain wants to again find the balance, right? In some of the tracks, like the stereo audio, there is a very oscillatory component present of where the track will have one aspect of it. Now, is this something that like I'm consciously using with like my music generator? No, but it often just falls into place in a very like I'm able to tell what's going on the same way, like how I discussed before, like where different parts of the songs of the fields have different energies, like more the subfields are present more within those different parts. The same thing's true here where there's like a lot of nuance into it. And like, which is again, I guess I gotta go to school for music theory to truly like be able to express some of these things. But like, and also from like a shamanic standpoint, like the flute, has a much different quality to it in terms of healing applications than the drum, right? If someone is, not grounded, using the drum would be the best state. But if they're in like a primal rage, ungrounded, me drumming might not be the best idea because now I'm just going to bring them more towards that. Whereas again, like the flute, is more soothing, right? And it's more of a suturing, like soothing energy. It can be piercing like a knife, as well. But again, generally speaking, we all understand these, we all subconsciously understand these different archetypes and energies present within, music and different things. We just don't, often articulate or talk about it. Or again, like the rattles, their ability to disperse and move energy, which again, oftentimes rattling can be agitating. Like how many people enjoy the sound of a loose piece of plastic or material in their vehicle rattling in the as they're driving. Most people say, like, I always laugh to myself when people say, like, I hate that rattling noise. And I just think about my rattles and how, again, they're really good dispelling negative energy. But again, people don't like, it's not them, it's what's in them. But, they don't like the sensations that arise from these different things. So, anyways, that's present within the fields. And again, going back to binaural component, it's not a pure binaural in a sense, but there is brain hemisphere left and right alternating to bring one's consciousness more centered in between them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe just a quick tangent on the rattles and kind of like disrupting or like kind of clearing the energy fields, like make make the environment more like settled, or just kind of like disrupt like a loop or pattern that might be going on. I was thinking about that. I was walking in the woods and I heard cicadas, or something that sounded like cicadas, like this kind of like zzz, or like I can't mimic a cicada sound, but people have probably heard it before. But it got me thinking. I was like, oh, maybe they're like kind of nature's rattle in a way of like kind of creating this disruption field and like settling the energetics of the forest. Have you thought about that?
I think about this stuff all the time. I love that you're bringing this up. Yeah, I mean, again, form follows function. So if we look at like the function of different frequencies, generally speaking, again, the lower frequencies are primarily, again, for the grounding qualities, connecting to the root chakra or the earth. And then like the high, but then like look at like what has low base in nature. Like what things have that form, that morphology, okay? Like tigers, lions, bears, elephants, again, large creatures. And by very natural design, I don't know if I've talked about neoteny here before, but again, like, cute, or things that we deem are cute, and to be protected are usually less androgenic or masculine in terms of their features. So, like the difference between like a wild wolf and a domesticated dog is essentially how dangerous and masculine they are. The dog has soft, rounded ear tips, a softer muzzle and snout, more softer features in their body and musculature, whereas the wolf has the pointed ears, the very angular snout and jaw, much greater developed canines and tooth structure. And the same thing is good present. Like, if you look at the morphology of, again, a woman with a small waist and wide hips. Well, her form is signaling to the function, which is the more subconscious thing that we all understand to be true, but people just don't really talk about it in broad light, which is she has a good capacity at reproducing children without having problems in childbirth. And then if we look at the other side of the spectrum of like, oh, this dude has broad shoulders, a small waist, and he's tall. Okay, this guy is big. This guy can protect, produce, provide. Like, this guy is not going to die, not going to impregnate me and then die and get killed. Or again, he can protect me from other things and my children. That's the subconscious primal stuff all going on. Going back to the musical notes and the frequencies, like nature is doing the same thing. So like the cicadas, I love that, of like them acting as that, uh, nature's rattle to disrupt frequencies. Or again, when the birds are singing in the morning, there's a different ambiance presented from that. Or again, when you have the mosquito in your ear, there's also a much different, thing. Which I was saying this before, it's like mosquitoes are kind of like how a lot of subliminals are when they speed them up. It's just like this like high pitched squealing in your ear, which is interesting to think about.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually a good segue. I was going to ask about subliminals. So I know in the past, have used other creators' subliminals, and you haven't specifically put out any on the site. Can you maybe talk through your thinking there, and maybe some of the differences between using a morphic field and using a subliminal?
First, I'll go into the differences in terms of usage, application, and restrictions, in this case. So the subliminal is, again, subliminal, below liminal conscious awareness. So it's an unperceived stimulus or energy. In this case, it's affirmations or words, a script usually reoccurring or layered or looped. It could be sped up to high speeds and it'll still register in your subconscious. There's scientific studies that prove this. Like when they speed it up to the point where it sounds like this is squealing in your ear, it's still registering. You may not be able to even pick up on a single word, but your subconscious still is. This again, why the threat of such things, being layered in the media and all these other things is so dangerous if abused. But I digress. But the primary engine or metabolizer of a subliminal is your brain housing group. It is your mind. So, with subliminals, a lot of subliminal creators will say like, hey, headphones are most ideal. With fields, you can use, I've found benefit from all modalities. They have their pros and cons between, using speakers, between using headphones, between using the shocks, between using IEMs. Yeah. But with subliminals, you need to have it enter in your subconscious mind. So like if you have it on a speaker and it's so quiet that you don't even hear, right? It doesn't even enter into your brain. It will rather vibrate your, ear bones. So that way it produces a signal to reach your brain, right? Of actually producing that message in your brain. It's not going to work. So you need to make sure you actually can hear, the thing. Whereas with the field, you can have it at 1% volume on your phone playing while you're sleeping and have earplugs in. It's still going to work because, again, it's still that electromagnetic field morphogenetic component, the intention programmed into it is still going to work regardless. It doesn't require your hearing it. It just needs to hit, be in your vicinity so the electromagnetic waves can, collide. That's all that has to happen. Subliminal different mode of action as well. So, and then some risks with the subliminals, as we were talking earlier, it's like, I've experienced this. I've seen it happen with a lot of other people as well. And you can really fry your brain. Like if you listen to subliminals for hours, you can get listener's fatigue, or even with binaurals as well, listener's fatigue and headaches, or where again, you hear it get tinnitus, like ringing in your ears. Cause again, like it's not, samadhi state could be defined again as living without thought. And again, words going back to fields, emotions, and thoughts. Thoughts are again still like this very human fault. Again, words just point at things. Words are not things. This is again why I've talked before about like doing subliminals in Latin, because there's a lot less interpretation and spell casting involved there, that can go wrong because it's more concrete. Again, fields grow with time and it's dead language, so it's not being used in dialects. I digress. Whereas, people fry their brains, and then again, and then also too, one of the other risks is it's very easy for people to employ brainwashing or worship affirmations, which we talked about in the past. Whereas with a field, although people have in the past demonstrated that they can do siphoning and whatnot, I have not seen nearly the same degree of risk with fields as I have with subliminals, right? Because again, we're always getting exposed to fields in various capacities. Again, just the nature of your environment, what clothes you're wearing, these things are all interacting all the time, and we're always exchanging information on all these various degrees. But subliminals are a much more foreign thing. And when I really, it's also I want to do it in Latin, but when I really think about, I was thinking this the other day too, about the mosquito and how it sounded like a subliminal. And I was thinking to myself about how, like, the devil whispers. The devil doesn't shout in your ear. The devil whispers in your ear. And that's how the demonic forces operate too. Whereas, when angels come and appear before, humans, they show themselves and they tell you, don't be afraid. They actually show themselves. Cause again, truth doesn't need to hide. So I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, interesting. It's interesting too, in my experience of like, I've seen a lot more of the demonic as well in those subliminal things, because again, it's especially if the person doesn't tell you what the affirmations are, or if they're lying, right? You don't know. But the same thing goes for morphic field creators who don't actually tell people what's put inside, and just give a big sales pitch. So there's different things there. Did I get everything, brother?
Yeah, I guess maybe just to pick up and break it down a little bit further. So it's like the subliminals can fry you or like overload your system, because even though you may not, and actually I guess you probably, it's best if you can't hear the words that are being said, because then it would be like a supraliminal or whatever, like a conscious ingestion of the affirmations or whatnot. So it's like, so if it's not audible to you, and then they do kind of go straight into your subconscious, which is like kind of the point. But that processing of it by your subconscious is still happening. So your brain is still devoting resources to like listening, for lack of a better term, and like understanding and then like incorporating it. So it will take energy and brain capacity, even if they're just like kind of passively listening to it. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, again, whereas, because let's look at this from a very mathematical standpoint as well. The brain is the sole responsibility in terms of like processing this energy and then manifesting it and distilling it throughout the right kind. Like, well, I have, large cheekbones. I have a strong jaw. Like, and it's like the brain's the one having to do all that work, which then disseminates to the rest of the body. Whereas again, getting exposed to a field is working, the body's working on this, your aura is working on this simultaneously, like your brain is also working on this, but like the somatic and cymatic aspects are so huge, especially the somatic, like the feeling, right? People oftentimes state, like when they listen to a field or use a field, like how they feel from using the field, which again, further embodying something is one of the greatest ways to actually be that and resonate with that, right? Because again, going back to this form follows function, so the more that you can feel that way, the more that you're actually going to do those things, and the more easily you're going to embody it. I would also expect that the reason why a lot of people too, they get stopped or they stop getting results with certain fields because they don't realize that there's also simultaneously like different lessons occurring at once. For example, like if you're listening to a field for attracting females, you're not just gonna like if your base level is, incel virgin living, in your mom's basement, and you're trying to attract again like nines and tens, like even if the field just did pull, or the sub, you just manifested that level right in front of your face, you probably wouldn't even know how to handle the situation. Like, again, there's so many different layers and dimensions of this. So I think like the teaching will continue, the lesson has been truly learned. And I've seen this myself with fields of where there's like a level up stage of where, like, if I want to be able to interact with this energy at a greater capacity, there's something I need to fix within myself, my own energy system, whether it be one of my chakras, whether it be a dietary piece, whether that be just dialing in my own health and wellness more. Because again, to be able to run more programs, I got to have a more powerful, hard drive and more powerful software. So like, physicality and other things.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think like for me, it's like subliminals versus morphic fields from like a inexperienced or like coming in completely like maybe closed-minded would be the term of someone like brand new to this whole endeavor of like trying to change your either behaviors or like lived experience through the use of audios and things like that. It's like subliminals sound a lot like self hypnosis or maybe other hypnosis, like to a certain extent, because it's like you're planting these thoughts or words or phrases into your mind and like continuing to play them over and over again, and then like they kind of become like this program that's like running in the background. And like you were mentioning with the words or like kind of pointing to things, it's just like a more clear cut like input to output ratio. Whereas on the morphic field, I think it requires a little bit more of a perhaps open mind or mental framework that's outside of our like typical like one-to-one comparison. Could you maybe like talk about like that difference, or like how folks maybe start off either using subliminals first or like more go into morphic fields after? Have you seen that kind of progression, or is it kind of case by case?
I'd say most people start off with subs and then go to fields. Yeah, just again, because it's a frequency thing too, which just as again, if I tell a being that believes that it must prey upon the flesh and blood of other beings, that's what it's been doing. Let's just say a lesser vampire, like it believes that it must steal from others in order to survive, let alone thrive. Versus if I tell it, hey, you can just, get energy from all the energy that's just around you. There's an abundance, there's an unlimited supply. You don't need to steal from anyone. That just seems like complete absurdity. But again, these same beings also can't stand the light of the sun. But I digress. So subliminals is again a much easier to grab mental concept for most people. It's again, like you discussed before, like when I did coaching with you, I didn't throw fields on you first. I threw subliminals at you first. I do that with most of my clients. I go over like, and most people will at least understand spoken affirmations. They've seen enough celebrities talk about how, and enough entrepreneurs talk about their self-talk and affirmations, and it's widely understood. So affirmations, then subliminals, maybe binaurals, and then fields, because at that point they've seen, okay, again, just as I've talked about my dietary journey, like and every single time I leveled up, there was fear before I leveled up, right? I've said this, I was like, when I first went, vegetarian, I was like, oh, I'm gonna lose all my muscle. And then when I first went raw, I was afraid I'm gonna lose all my muscle. Then when I started juicing, I was afraid I was gonna lose all my muscle. And as I'm going more pranic, I was like afraid I'm gonna lose. And I'm not losing my muscle. So again, like with this growth of like, I remember too, like of when I started interactive fields, I'm like, like I don't understand how this works yet. And I was very new to it, but I've seen enough testimonies around this, and I've seen enough talk and results posted, and I've also gotten enough of like an initial like sensation. Again, also testing it with psychedelics was huge for me, making it very clear what was going on. So I had kind of a cheat code in that way compared to most people. Bufo with anything. I mean, just gracias medicinas. Like you can hold a piece of black tourmaline in your hands with Bufo, and you can feel the exact range of its aura of influence. I mean, with Bufo, you can feel profoundly how, and I mean, like you're understanding it all simultaneously at once, how every frequency and like every up and down of every wavelength is impacting your body consciousness in these different ways. And then, so then we get to the field component of things, which I say is operating on all these different dimensions. It becomes very clear, like what is working and like what's up and what's going on, which is again why I also encourage people, whether it be for what clothing they're wearing, what food they're eating, or again, interacting with, even with fields, whether it be cannabis, which is still a mild psychedelic, or psilocybin or LSD, to take like, microdose or like a smaller dose and to interact with the fields, because again, where attention goes, energy flows. And again, you can't heal what you can't feel. So the more aware, more energy sensitive you are when interacting with these tools as well, the greater your ability to remember the fields, emotions, thoughts, the quicker you're able to go through that loop of, oh, I interacted with this energy. I feel how it feels in my body. Meanwhile, the psychedelics got my brain flow with serotonin and crosstalk, and I'm able to completely feel my body and connect the dots on how this is occurring and transpiring in my physicality, all while witnessing, as I was talking about the weather with you earlier, all while witnessing the external manifestations that are occurring in concurrence and transpondence with as above, so below, and as within, so without. And it's pretty wild.
Yeah. For those that maybe don't have readily accessible psychedelics, is like breath work or something like that another way to get there?
Breathwork's great. Breathwork's great. If people have access to put themselves in any sort of state of sensory deprivation, that also will greatly, because again, if you're in, I'm not saying it has an anechoic chamber, I wish, but if you find yourself not able to feel the energies in real time and interact with them, or again, just even stay focused, putting yourself in a dark room, blackout headphones, blackout drapes, whether it be on the speakers or headphones with the field, or whatever tool you're using. Because again, whether or not you're conscious of all the different things that are impacting you, again, like just having the lights off in your room and not enable your body to fall into a deeper state of rest, because your skin is connected to your body. Like people think that, oh, as long as I don't have the light hit my eyes, it's not affecting me. Like, no, it is. Light in your skin is also affecting your nervous system and your body's responses. We have a great degree of intelligence in the body and sensory awareness that we're just not fully conscious of sometimes. Same with the field. So, putting yourself aware, like, hey, there's no sound way on downstairs. Okay, and then again slowing these down. So going back to the removing the variables component as far as like big stacks and dietary components, removing the variables, other variables from the equation, the energetic equation of what you're experiencing. So that way it becomes much easier to determine what's going on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about our future sponsor, fingers crossed, the Shocks Open Swims. Could you maybe talk about why you enjoy using them for listening to fields? And you got them on right now.
Got them on right now. Always. Uh, I love them because, and again, I'm speaking as someone who's done IEMs, done over-the-ear headphones. You know, I haven't like touched on like the like multi-$1,000 brands, but I've spent, you know, a fair amount of money on different audio equipments and of good grade to see what works. You know, MP3 player, and the Shocks are my favorite because there's the least amount of disruption in your everyday life. And it's the most practical and tactical solution I've found, and also health wise as well. You know, with the MP3 player, you have it's a great dedicated tool because some people when they use fields on their phone, they then get distracted by their phones, you know, of where you know they pop up the scene. So like just again, just remove the external factor and have this be a dedicated tool of like this is for fields and my audios and whatnot. High fidelity also displays the mandalas, which is great. But again, you put headphones on over your ears or in your ears, you lose a lot of situational awareness. And again, running wired headphones also means, you know, now you're like catching on stuff and you're constrained to the limitations of that in terms of like your workouts. Um, the Bluetooth headphones, obviously with like, you know, phones, well, not you're frying your brain with EMF. That's no good. Then speakers are great, but then again, public environments aren't permissive to blasting a speaker everywhere. So the Shocks offer a non-EMF, a non-losing of situational awareness, because again, you can have these things playing at 1%, the lowest volume setting, to where you can barely hear it and still be aware of your surroundings, but still know that like you're constantly, you know, you're adhering to your uh, dosage of your schedule. Because I know before there's been environments before I discovered the Shocks of where, you know, I'd be in the kitchen juicing and having my headphones on, listening to my whatever I was listening at the time, and then someone would interrupt me. And now I'm like, okay, like now it's like you interrupted my stack and I feel like, you know, I lost my adherence. There's no it's plug and play. And then lastly, they're osteophonic and made of titanium, which is my favorite metal, titanium. But they're osteophonic. They don't actually have a speaker that produces out to the world. It's vibrating again your bones in your ear out here, which moves through, and then again you hear the sound in your skull. Like I'm, I'm sure you've like. Whereas the headphones is this out in experience, whereas with the Shocks, it's and especially if you go underwater, it's amazing. Uh, I don't know if you swam here, you see that, but it's
Not yet.
amazing to go underwater with them because then it's you know the deafening experience of being on water, but then you're just hearing you know the tracks playing inside your skull. It's great.
Very cool. And that's kind of like why they were first designed the way they were, right? It's like they're called, the company's called Open Swim. So it's like they're designed to swim with the headphones. And they're like, yeah, like Nobu was mentioning, like they don't actually go in your ear. They go kind of like the emitting of the sound is like right in front of it. So it's like hitting that bone and then kind of conducts to your brain or eardrum or whatever. So yeah, it's a very cool experience. I definitely agree with the recommendation and have been using them for the past few months. And yeah, you can have conversations with people and still have them in. So it's like you can go about your day, like you're saying, you have them in 24/7 or whatever. You can definitely go about your day and still be getting the benefits from the fields and then still have your conversations or phone calls or whatever you need to do. So it's, yeah, they're pretty cool. Thanks for turning me on to them. And hopefully, if you're out there listening and you work at Open Swim, drop us a line. We want to talk to you guys. Awesome. Any other topics in this Morphic field application we want to dive into, or have we covered it all?
Ultimately, just again, just reading the point, it's like you have to, at the end of the day, you, the end user, have to learn to experiment with these different like extremes I've illustrated, like, and learn your own seasons with things, right? Like, so you have, again, I don't want, when people ask me, it's like, how many should I listen to? Like, how often? It's like, I often don't give, again, that's how I don't list results for, this field's going to do this, that, or there. It's like, because again, you make up 33% of that equation. You're a huge part of it. Like, I don't know. I can't account for everyone's individual karmic, genetic, astrological, cellular, personality, spiritual health things. So I can't tell you like Big Pharma likes to do that this drug will do this. And like, I'm not gonna, there's no bull here. Like, I'm not lying and I'm not selling and telling. It just is what it is. But as far as like, you just all need to become your own physician in this capacity and be willing to take time to get messy and to experiment. Spend a week just doing one field or one audio at a time and see, again, like, because again, also too, like, why I say that is because if you just use one field for a week, like if you're having like blockages or like subconscious like doubts, so I know how it's like when you're new, like you're thinking to yourself like, is this even working? Am I wasting my time? Blah, blah, blah. And you just do one field for a week, like you will have tangible changes in your reality. So again, just how I say, like, just do watermelon for a week. Like you will have shifts in your consciousness. Same principle. Because again, mathematically, it removes all the extraneous variables, but people don't like that, whether I say about watermelon or about just doing one field, because people want everything now. It's like, Nobu, why can't I process and assimilate 20 different fields? Like, your field's garbage. Like, no, like, you're you're being gluttonous and greedy, dog. Like, that's what's going on. Like, patience, like, and just one last thing. It's like, this applies to life, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
How focused you are on any one thing is going to determine how much progress you make with it. Because again, energy in, energy out, right?
Right.
As you and I have learned this journey together, brother, it's like, like, okay, you got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got YouTube, you got Spotify, you got Telegram, and you got like life. And then it's like, it is, we're all human and you can't do everything at once. So sometimes it's just best just to pick one thing and just stick with it and wait till you get solid, tangible results. And then we'll add more things. And I do this in my coaching. You know this. Like, I don't give clients more and more stuff if they're not getting it done. I shrink back because we need adherence and integration over volumes of content.
Yeah. I think it kind of circles back to talked about a lot about finding your why and really getting clear on like what is your priority, what are your main goals, and just like really concentrating and focusing on those and picking a field that's in line with that rather than trying to become superhuman overnight by getting every single morphic field on the site. Just trying to blast yourself with all those just 24/7. Yeah, it'll just be too dispersed. So excellent. Lots to consider here. Any final comments you want to leave the audience with before we close out?
Thank you to those of you who have supported me since day one. I greatly appreciate you, and I wouldn't have gotten into this had it not been for the shenanigans of others. So I am also grateful to those and their shenanigans for inspiring me to do this in the first place.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks to the OGs, and check out the site on the Morphic Field page. Plenty of free ones, plenty of cool ones that are for sale. So we will see you there and see you next time. So thank you everybody for listening.